At 9:47 that morning, my phone buzzed. Happy anniversary. Babe. Stuck at work. Can't wait tonight. Love you. I was standing in the back office of my restaurant, wiping flour off my hands, when I glanced through the glass toward the dining room and my brain just stalled. She was there. My wife. 2 tables from my office, kissing my younger brother like it wasn't the first time. Not quick, not accidental. The kind of kiss that comes from practice. I don't remember dropping the phone. I just remember the sound. I was already moving for the door when a voice behind me cut through everything. Don't. Not yet. A hand on my shoulder. Firm. Controlled. Adrian. If you walk out there now, you lose everything. I think something bigger is going on. If you've ever trusted the wrong person, comment where you're watching from. I read every single one. And just so you know, while parts of this story are dramatized for educational purposes, the lessons about trust, betrayal, and staying one step ahead are very real. Because what I saw at 9:47 that morning, that was just the beginning. February 14th, a gray Wednesday. 2 years since Vanessa and I stood under an oak arch in Laurelhurst Park and promised forever. I got to Casa Elena at 7:30 a.m., like I always do. Lights on, ovens preheating, inventory clipboard on the stainless prep table. I told the line cooks we'd open at 11, but I wanted the morning quiet. I was planning a special anniversary menu, her favorite saffron risotto, the one I made the night I proposed. By 9:40 the dining room was half set, chairs aligned, silverware rolled. My sous chef Matteo was polishing wine glasses near the front windows that looked out over Hawthorne. At exactly 9:47 a.m., my phone buzzed on the flour-dusted counter. Happy anniversary, babe. Stuck at work, can't wait tonight, love you. For a second, I felt relief. The last few months had been tense, distance, late nights, conversations that never really finished. I told myself it was stress, money, expansion pressure. I picked up my phone to reply. That's when I saw her. Through the glass partition of my office, I caught a reflection, first dark hair, green coat I'd bought her for Christmas. Then I looked up fully. Vanessa was sitting at a corner table near the front window. Less than 30 feet from me, across from her sat my younger brother, Lucas. He was leaning back in his chair like he owned the place, like he hadn't grown up washing dishes in this kitchen, while I worked double shifts to keep our family afloat. Vanessa reached across the table and touched his wrist. Then she stood up, walked around, and kissed him. Not hesitation, not confusion. Comfort. He cupped her face. The same way I used to. The risotto timer went off behind me. I didn't move. My phone slipped out of my hand and hit the desk. The screen still lit up with her message about being stuck at work. I felt heat first, then nothing. I was already heading for the dining room door when someone stepped directly into my path. Adrian. I looked up and recognized her instantly. Detective Sarah Morgan. We'd graduated the same year. She came into the restaurant sometimes on her days off. She had a black coffee in her hand and a look on her face that wasn't surprise. Don't go out there, she said quietly. Move. If you confront them right now, you get a scene, you get denial, and they go underground. My jaw was locked so tight it hurt. He's my brother, I know. I saw them come in 20 minutes ago. I saw the kiss. I also saw your face. I looked past her through the glass. Lucas was laughing at something Vanessa said, like they were just 2 people having brunch. You walk out there emotional, Sarah continued, voice low but steady. And you tip your hand. If this is just an affair, fine. But men and women bold enough to cheat in the husband's own restaurant, that's rarely the only secret. My stomach turned. What are you saying? I'm saying go home, now. While they think you're busy back here, check everything, his messages, her laptop, financials, anything tied to the restaurant, document it. Don't accuse, don't warn, just gather. Lucas stood up in the dining room, tossing cash on the table. Vanessa adjusted her coat. They were leaving. Adrian, Sarah said, pressing a card into my palm. Be smart. Rage feels good for 5 minutes. Strategy lasts in court. I watched my wife and my brother walk out the front door together at 9:52 a.m. 5 minutes after she texted me she was at work. I grabbed my coat, didn't say a word to Matteo, and walked out the back into the cold February drizzle. I wasn't shaking anymore. I was done reacting. Now I was going to find out how deep this went. The house was quiet when I got there. Too quiet. Vanessa's car wasn't in the driveway. Lucas's truck wasn't either. For a second, I just stood in the kitchen staring at the hardwood floors I'd installed myself 3 summers ago. Then, I walked straight to my office. Not hers, mine. I didn't start by tearing the place apart. I moved slow, drawer by drawer, file by file. I knew Vanessa used my desktop sometimes when hers froze. I knew Lucas had been helping with supplier negotiations the last few months. That was my first mistake. The second drawer of my desk had a folder I didn't recognize, plain manila. No label. Inside were preliminary divorce papers, filed but not served. My name typed cleanly across the top like a stranger's. Grounds irreconcilable differences. Requested division liquidation of shared business asset Casa Elena. My stomach dropped, but I kept reading. Attached behind it was a restaurant valuation. $3.1 million. A number I'd never seen before. Clipped to that was a printed email chain between Vanessa and someone named Victor Hale, a private equity investor I'd met once at a wine distributor event. Subject line: post-divorce acquisition strategy. My hands didn't shake. They felt heavy. In the emails, Victor laid it out cleanly. Once Adrian signs, we move fast. He's exhausted. Health issues make him pliable. Keep pressure consistent. Health issues. I thought about the nausea, the fatigue, the mornings I'd had to lean against the prep table because the room wouldn't stop spinning. Vanessa replied in one thread: he won't fight. He hates conflict. Lucas can help manage transition once he's out. Lucas. There were other messages. After the sale, Lucas and I can formalize everything. He trusts me completely. Then one that made my throat go dry. The slower and weaker he gets, the easier this is going to be. I leaned back in the chair. Weaker. I opened another folder in the desk drawer. This one wasn't hidden. It was sloppy. Probably Lucas's. Inside were printed wire transfers, personal account to personal account. Vanessa to Lucas, Lucas to Victor. Amounts that matched recent supplier delays and unexplained maintenance invoices. This wasn't an affair. It was a coordinated exit plan. Divorce me, sell my grandmother's restaurant, install my younger brother as transitional operator, cash out. And they'd already looped in an investor. I stared at the engagement photo on my desk. Vanessa's hand on my chest. Lucas smiling next to us. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt replaced, and then something colder slid into place. If they were this organized, this wasn't the first move. It was the middle of the game. I pulled out my phone and dialed Sarah. They're planning to divorce me and sell the restaurant, I said. There was a pause on the line. Then, you're not dealing with a love triangle, she replied. You're dealing with a financial conspiracy. She was right. And I had a feeling the emails weren't the worst thing I was about to find. That night, I didn't confront anyone. Vanessa came home around 7:30 p.m., smelling like citrus perfume and cold air. How was your day? She asked, leaning in to kiss my cheek. I held still. Busy. Lucas didn't text, didn't call. Silence from both of them, like nothing had shifted. But I couldn't stop replaying one line from the email. The slower and weaker he gets. For the past 4 months, I'd been sick more mornings than not. Nausea, cold sweats, a kind of fatigue that sank into the bone. I blamed long hours. Stress. Too much espresso. I even cut dairy for a while, thinking it was my stomach. Vanessa had insisted on making my coffee every morning. You work too hard, she'd say. Let me at least do this. At 6:12 a.m. the next morning, I stayed in bed when she got up. I heard the kitchen cabinet open. The ceramic mug set down. The spoon against porcelain. I walked in quietly, phone in my hand like I was checking messages. She didn't see me at first. Vanessa stood by the counter with her back to me. My coffee mug was already filled. Steam rising. In her right hand, she held a small brown bottle. She tilted it over the mug. 3 quick shakes. Clear liquid, not syrup, not cream. My pulse didn't spike, it dropped. She screwed the cap back on and slid the bottle into the drawer beside the stove, the one where we kept takeout menus and spare batteries. Then she turned, smiling. Morning, she said. I made it strong today. I looked at the mug. Dark. Normal. No smell different from any other day. Thanks, I replied. Steady. I picked it up, brought it to my lips. Didn't drink. Forgot something in the office, I said, setting it down casually. Be right back. In the hallway, my hands finally started to shake. I grabbed a clean glass jar from the pantry, one of the small ones we used for spice blends. Back in the kitchen, I acted distracted. Actually, I'm running late. I'll take it to go. I poured half the coffee into a travel thermos, the other half, when her back was turned, grabbing her purse. I tipped into the jar, sealed it tight. Vanessa kissed me on the cheek again before leaving. Feel better today, okay? She said softly. I stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the drawer where she'd hidden the bottle. This wasn't stress. This wasn't burnout. My wife wasn't just trying to divorce me. She was making me sick. Providence Medical Diagnostics sits 3 blocks off Burnside, between a dental office and a tax firm. I'd driven past it 100 times and Never once thought I'd walk in carrying a jar of my own coffee like evidence in a crime show. The receptionist looked up. "Appointment no," I said. "But I need a toxicology screen. As soon as possible." She hesitated, then handed me a clipboard. I didn't write everything, just enough. Possible food contamination, ongoing nausea, fatigue. When they called my name, a woman in her mid-40s met me in the hallway. Sharp eyes, calm voice. Dr. Rachel Bennett. Her office smelled like antiseptic and printer toner. I set the jar on her desk. "I think my wife has been putting something in my coffee," I said. There's a moment when you say something insane out loud and wait for the other person to decide who you are. Dr. Bennett didn't flinch. "How long have you been experiencing symptoms?" "4 months. Worse in the mornings, better by late afternoon, vomiting sometimes. Mostly nausea. Weakness." She nodded slowly. "Any recent changes in medication, diet?" "No." "Why do you suspect intentional contamination?" I held her gaze. "Because I watched her pour something into it this morning." Silence stretched for half a second, then she stood. "All right. We'll run a full toxicology panel on the sample. And I want blood work from you today as well." She paused before opening the door. "Are you safe at home?" The question landed heavier than anything else. "I don't know," I answered honestly. She studied my face. Maybe looking for denial, maybe looking for fear. "If this is deliberate," she said carefully, "it's not a prank, it's assault, possibly worse. Results will take 72 hours. I'll mark it urgent." 72 hours, 3 days of sleeping next to her. 3 days of acting normal. After the blood draw, I sat in my truck gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. If I was wrong, I'd look paranoid. Broken. If I was right, then the divorce plan wasn't the worst thing in those emails. I pulled out my phone and texted Sarah. "Samples at the lab, 72 hours, she replied, almost immediately. "Good. Do not confront, document everything. We move when you have proof." Proof. I started the engine and drove home. And for the first time since 9:47 a.m. the day before, I understood something clearly. This wasn't about betrayal anymore. This was about survival. Dr. Bennett called at 4:18 p.m. 3 days later. I was in the walk-in fridge at Casa Elena, checking produce deliveries when my phone vibrated in my apron pocket. I stepped outside into the alley before answering. "Adrian," she said, voice steady, "we have your results." I leaned against the brick wall. "Tell me." "The coffee sample tested positive for ipecac syrup." I closed my eyes. She continued. "Clinical but firm. In small, repeated doses, it causes persistent nausea, vomiting, muscle weakness, dehydration. Over time, it can lead to electrolyte imbalance and cardiac complications. 4 months. The levels in your blood work are consistent with repeated ingestion," she added. "Not accidental contamination. Not accidental." "Doctor?" I said, my voice flatter than I expected. "Is there any legitimate reason that would be in my system?" "No. Ipecac is used to induce vomiting. It should never be administered without informed medical supervision. Certainly not chronically." A pause. "This is intentional, Adrian." The word hung there. Intentional. I thanked her, ended the call, and stayed in the alley a few seconds longer. The hum of the refrigerator compressors sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else's life. Vanessa hadn't just been planning to divorce me. She'd been chemically wearing me down, weakening me, making me easier to push, easier to gaslight, easier to label unstable if I protested. I thought about the emails. The slower and weaker he gets, this wasn't stress, it wasn't burnout, it was strategy. I pulled up the photo app on my phone and scrolled to the pictures I'd taken of the divorce papers. The valuation, the emails. Now I had something they didn't expect. Proof. I called Sarah. "It's ipecac," I said. She didn't react emotionally. "Good, that gives us leverage. Leverage that makes this felony assault. Possibly attempted poisoning depending on intent. Now we escalate properly." For the first time in days, I didn't feel numb. I felt focused. If Vanessa and Lucas thought I was weak, they had no idea what they'd just triggered. There's a small storage room above Casa Elena that most people don't know about. Slanted ceiling. One window facing the alley. It used to be my grandmother Elena's office. I hadn't gone up there in months. That night, after closing, I locked the front doors and climbed the narrow wooden stairs alone. The place still smelled faintly like her perfume and old paper. Her desk was exactly how she left it. Second drawer on the right, that's where she kept the leather-bound recipe book. The original one, handwritten, stained with oil and wine. I pulled it out. Something thicker than paper shifted inside. An envelope. My name written in her careful script. Adrian. I sat down before opening it. Inside was a letter dated 5 years ago, a month before she passed. She wrote about legacy, about blood, About how restaurants don't get stolen from the outside, they get taken from inside by people who think they deserve what they didn't build. At the bottom, there was a document attached, a trust, $850,000, held in reserve, only to be activated if there was documented evidence of coercion, fraud, or an attempt to unlawfully seize Casa Elena from a direct family heir. My chest tightened. She had seen this possibility before I ever did. The trust wasn't accessible for expansion, not for remodeling, not for lifestyle upgrades. Only for defense, legal defense, asset protection, litigation. I leaned back in her chair and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Vanessa and Lucas thought they were draining me. But my grandmother had left me something stronger than money. She'd left me a weapon. And now I wasn't just defending myself. I was protecting her name. Benjamin Hartley's office overlooked the river. Old brick building, dark wood shelves, the kind of place where contracts go to survive. He'd been my grandmother's attorney for 20 years. When I walked in, I didn't waste time. I laid everything out on his desk in clean stacks. Divorce papers, restaurant valuation, email chains with Victor Hale, wire transfers, toxicology report confirming ipecac in my system. Benjamin didn't interrupt while he read. He adjusted his glasses once, jaw tightening slightly at the lab results. They intended to incapacitate you, he said finally. Not a question, yes. And liquidate Casa Elena during or immediately after the divorce filing, yes. He tapped the trust document with his pen. This activates it, he said. Documented fraud attempt tied to a direct heir. We can unlock the fund immediately. Good. We move in 3 directions, he continued. First, emergency injunction to freeze any pending transfer of ownership. Second, asset freeze request tied to suspected financial conspiracy. Third, referral to the district attorney regarding the poisoning. Hearing it laid out like that made it real. Systematic. Structured. Not emotional. Benjamin looked at me directly. Adrian. Once we file, this becomes open war. Are you prepared for that? I didn't hesitate. They already started it. He gave a slow nod. Then, we don't confront, we don't warn, we build. By the time I left his office, paperwork was already in motion. For the first time since this began, I wasn't reacting, I was advancing. I met Sarah that night at a quiet bar 2 blocks from the courthouse. Dim lights, no music loud enough to interfere with recording devices. Her choice. I slid a folder across the table. Everything's in there, I said. Lab report, emails, wire transfers, trust activation. She flipped through it methodically. You have enough to arrest on poisoning, she said. We could bring Vanessa in tomorrow. And Lucas, accessory, financial conspiracy at minimum. I shook my head. Not yet. She looked up. Why? Because this still feels halfway. I want intent. I want them planning the next move. On record. Sarah leaned back, studying me. You want them caught in motion? Yes. After a beat. She nodded slowly. All right. Then we escalate surveillance. We outlined it clean and simple. Hidden cameras in the kitchen and office at the restaurant placed legally under my ownership rights. Audio recording equipment in shared business spaces. Financial monitoring on outgoing accounts flagged by Benjamin. And a discreet tail on Victor Hale. Lucas will get sloppy, Sarah said. Men who think they've already won usually do. I didn't respond. I was thinking about something else. They think I'm weak, I said finally. They think I'm getting sicker. Good, she replied. Let them. As we stood to leave, she paused. Adrian, once we do this, there's no clean ending. You understand that I did. There was no version of this where my marriage survived, no version where my brother walked back into my life. But there was a version where they didn't get away with it. Set it up, I said. The trap wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about finishing what they started. The first real break came 6 days later. It wasn't subtle, it wasn't emotional. It was recorded. One of the cameras we installed in my office picked up Lucas after closing. He thought he was alone. He locked the door behind him and made a call. I watched the footage with Sarah in a small conference room at the precinct. Lucas's voice was low, but clear enough. Yeah, it has to look like equipment failure, he said. Old building, faulty valve, late night prep shift. He's usually there alone. My stomach didn't move, my face didn't change. On speaker, another male voice answered. Rough. Impatient. That kind of thing costs extra, Lucas replied. Victor said it's covered. Just make sure it happens after service. Less collateral. Less collateral. Sarah paused the footage. We rewound. Played it again. The man on the other end of the line was identified within hours. Rick Donovan, contractor. prior citations related to unsafe gas line modifications. Sarah didn't look at me when she spoke. They're planning to stage a gas leak at Casa Elena. I nodded once. Lucas's next line played. It'll be quick. He's already weak. Nobody will question it. Already weak. I felt something settle inside me. Not rage, clarity. This wasn't about divorce. This wasn't about money. They were escalating. Attempted homicide conspiracy, Sarah said quietly. That call alone puts them in deep. I stared at the paused frame of my brother standing in my office, leaning against my grandmother's desk. He thought I was fading. He thought this would end quietly. Instead, he had just handed us intent. And intent changes everything. I hired Tom Anderson 2 days after we got the gas leak recording. Tom wasn't flashy, former military. Didn't ask unnecessary questions. He just wanted names, schedules, and payment up front. Focus on Lucas and Vanessa, I told him. I want patterns, meetings, hotels, medical appointments, anything that looks like long-term planning. He nodded once. Give me a week. It took 4 days. Tom called me at 6:30 a.m. They're at Riverstone Fertility Clinic, he said. Second visit this month. For a second, I didn't understand what he meant. Fertility, yes. I confirmed with a staff contact, consultation under Vanessa Morales and Lucas Morales. Lucas, my brother. I drove straight to Sarah. She listened without interrupting. Could be cover, she said. Could be real. Tom dug deeper. By that afternoon, we had copies of intake forms Vanessa had filled out. In one of the notes sections, she'd written, trying to conceive for 6 months. Husband, unaware. Husband, unaware. My jaw tightened. Lucas believed she was going to leave me. That once the restaurant sold, they'd disappear together and start fresh. There were messages between them that Tom recovered from a cloud backup Lucas hadn't secured properly. Vanessa, once I'm pregnant, he won't suspect anything. He'll just blame stress. Lucas, after the sale, it'll be our place. I promise. But there was something else. Benjamin's office pulled medical records through legal channels once the poisoning case opened formally. Vanessa had undergone a tubal ligation 3 years ago. Permanent. No reversal documented. She couldn't get pregnant. Not by me, not by Lucas. She had never intended to build a life with him. She was dangling a future to keep him loyal. Using him as leverage, as muscle, as distraction. Sarah folded her arms. So she's manipulating both sides. Yes, Lucas thought he was replacing me. In reality, he was disposable. I didn't feel sympathy, but I did understand something important. Vanessa wasn't driven by love. She was driven by control. And now that we had financial fraud, poisoning, and conspiracy to cause a fatal gas explosion, we had motive layered with deception. This wasn't a messy affair. It was calculated, and they were both already deeper than they realized. We didn't move immediately. That surprised people when I tell this story. But Sarah was clear if we arrested them after the gas call, they'd lawyer up and bury the financial side. If we waited, if we documented more coordination, the case would become airtight. So we waited. 7.5 months. 7.5 months of eating dinner across from Vanessa like I didn't know she tried to poison me. 7.5 months of watching Lucas sit at my bar on Fridays, acting like the concerned little brother. During that time, we prepared. First, I contacted Northwest Gas privately. I told them I suspected tampering with an exterior valve. They sent a technician under the pretext of routine maintenance. He found it within minutes. A primary shutoff line had been loosened, not enough to cause an immediate leak, but enough to destabilize pressure over time. Someone's been in here, he said. I authorized a full replacement. Then, I installed something Lucas didn't know about, a remote shutoff system tied to my phone. If pressure spiked, if flow fluctuated, I could cut gas to the entire building instantly. Benjamin coordinated asset freezes quietly in the background. The trust fund activated. Financial surveillance tightened. Sarah expanded monitoring on Victor and Rick Donovan. We documented meetings, payments, text logs, and I changed my behavior deliberately. I let myself look tired, skipped shaving some mornings, left early twice because I felt sick. Vanessa noticed. You should really see a specialist, she said one night. Touching my arm, I held her gaze. Maybe, I replied. Lucas grew bolder too. He started reviewing supply contracts without asking. Spoke to staff like he was already in charge. Men who think they're about to inherit something get careless. By late October, we knew the projected date, October 28th, a Friday. Full reservation list. High gas usage, late cleanup shift. Rick Donovan had texted Lucas, that's the night. Sarah looked at me across her desk. You understand this could have killed you, she said. I know. You still want to let it play out. I thought about my grandmother's kitchen, the walls, the photos, the staff who trusted me. They're not blowing up my restaurant, I said. But they are going to walk into it thinking they are. We weren't stopping the board from being set. We were rearranging it, and October 28th was going to be their checkmate. October 27th, one night before the date they chose, Sarah had a tech unit clone Vanessa's number temporarily under warrant. I didn't want guesswork. I wanted them stepping exactly where we needed them. But the final nudge, that was mine. Using a prepaid burner phone, I sent Lucas a message crafted to mirror Vanessa's tone, the same shorthand. The same clipped punctuation she always used when she was excited. Tomorrow night. Anniversary dinner at the restaurant. After service. Everything changes. Once it's done, we're free. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Then, are you sure? I waited 10 full seconds, Victor confirmed. Rick's ready. No backing out now. The typing bubble came back faster this time. I'll be there. I'm done hiding. Done hiding. He thought this was the final act of some twisted love story. Sarah reviewed the exchange and nodded once. He believes it, she said. He'll show. What about Vanessa? She's already committed. We've monitored the coordination. She expects a late-night incident. I stared at the burner phone in my hand. Lucas wasn't cautious anymore. He wasn't doubting her. He wasn't questioning why the plan suddenly accelerated. He wanted the inheritance, the life, the future she'd promised. Tomorrow, Sarah said, standing. We let them walk into the room thinking they've won. I slid the burner phone across the table to her. They won't see it coming, I said. Not the evidence, not the room. Not the truth waiting for them. October 28th wasn't going to be an explosion. It was going to be a public detonation, and they were walking straight toward it. October 28th started at 6:00 a.m. before sunrise. Before staff arrived. Before the city moved. The first thing I did was open the remote shutoff app on my phone. Gas pressure normal. I tapped the manual override and shut the entire system down. If Rick Donovan showed up to loosen anything that night, he'd be working with deadlines. Casa Elena would not burn. Then, I started cooking. 7 courses. 7 sins, not written on the menu that way. But I knew what each plate represented. Course 1 bitter greens with lemon deception. Course 2 smoked tomato bisque manipulation. Course 3 charred octopus greed. Course 4 saffron risotto betrayal. Course 5 short rib conspiracy. Course 6 dark chocolate tart poison. Course 7 espresso intent. I set the private dining room myself. 12 seats, white linen, projector mounted discreetly on the back wall, HDMI cable tested twice. At noon, I stepped into the dining room and recorded a short message for social media. If you're watching this, comment the word truth. Tonight's story contains dramatized elements for educational purposes, but the lessons about trust and evidence are real. I posted it. Retention mattered. But tonight wasn't about views. By 7:45 p.m., the restaurant was full. Regular guests, a few invited friends, 2 off-duty officers seated separately near the back. At 9:58 p.m., after final service ended, I invited the private guests into the back room. Vanessa arrived first, elegant, composed, wearing the green coat. Lucas came 5 minutes later. No hesitation. Victor Hale showed at 10:07 p.m. He thought it was a celebration. I stood at the head of the table as they took their seats. The lights dimmed slightly. Projector on standby. Vanessa smiled at me. Happy anniversary, she said softly. I returned the look without warmth. Let's begin, I replied. They thought they were walking into freedom. They had no idea they were sitting down for judgment. I waited until everyone had a glass in front of them. Wine poured. Water set. Silverware aligned. The room felt calm, intimate, controlled. Vanessa reached for my hand across the table like we were about to relive something romantic. I didn't take it. I wanted tonight to be honest, I said. My voice, even. No more misunderstandings, no more secrets. Lucas shifted in his seat. Victor glanced between us. Faint irritation behind his smile. I nodded toward the first course as servers placed the plates down. Bitter greens, I said. For deception. Vanessa laughed lightly. Still dramatic. Adrian, I picked up the remote and turned on the projector. The screen lit up with a screenshot of the 9:47 a.m. text. Happy anniversary. Babe. Stuck at work. The next image replaced it. Security footage from the dining room. Her, Lucas, the kiss. The room went silent. Lucas straightened. You've been spying on us, no? I said calmly. I own the building. Course 2 arrived. Smoked tomato, I continued. For manipulation. The screen shifted to printed emails. Subject line, post-divorce acquisition strategy. Victor's face drained slightly of color. Vanessa's expression hardened. I read aloud. He's exhausted. Health issues make him pliable. Lucas looked at her. Vanessa, she didn't answer. Course 3, charred octopus, for greed. Wire transfers appeared next. Vanessa to Lucas, Lucas to Victor. Numbers highlighted. Dates circled. Victor stood halfway. This is a private matter. Sit, I said without raising my voice. He sat. Course 4. Saffron risotto. For betrayal. Divorce filings. Restaurant valuation. Projected liquidation timeline. Vanessa finally spoke. You were going to lose it anyway, she said quietly. You can't even keep yourself healthy. The words landed like confirmation. Course 5. Short rib. For conspiracy. The room darkened slightly as the next clip played. Lucas in my office, his voice clear. It has to look like equipment failure. He's usually there alone. Rick Donovan's reply through speaker. That kind of thing costs extra. Lucas turned white. That's not what. It's exactly what. Sarah's voice cut in from behind him. She stepped forward from the back wall. Badge visible. 2 officers moved into position. Vanessa looked at Lucas like she was calculating escape routes. Course 6. Dark chocolate tart, I said. For poison. I held up the lab report. Ipecac. Repeated dosing. 4 months. I met Vanessa's eyes. You made my coffee every morning. For the first time, something cracked in her expression. Lucas stared at her. You said he was just stressed. She didn't look at him. Course 7. Espresso. I finished. For intent, the final clip played. Lucas on the phone. It'll be quick. He's already weak. Victor's payment confirmation logs flashed next. Then the fertility clinic intake form. Trying to conceive for 6 months. Husband unaware? Lucas's head snapped toward Vanessa. You said. Benjamin's voice came from the side of the room. Medical records confirmed tubal ligation 3 years ago. Silence. Vanessa closed her eyes briefly. Lucas's voice broke. You told me we were starting over. She finally looked at him. I told you what I needed you to believe. That was the moment something in Lucas collapsed. Victor tried to stand again. This is entrapment. No, Sarah said evenly. This is documentation. She nodded once. Lucas Morales. Vanessa Morales. Victor Hale. You are being detained pending charges related to financial conspiracy, felony poisoning, and conspiracy to commit arson resulting in potential homicide. Lucas looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. I didn't mean for it to go that far, he said. I didn't mean for anyone else to get hurt. There it was. Intent confirmed. Vanessa stayed silent as cuffs clicked into place. Victor protested loudly. It didn't matter. Officers moved efficiently. Phones collected. Laptops seized from briefcases. Evidence bags labeled. Guests in the outer dining room murmured as flashing lights reflected faintly through the front windows. I didn't feel triumph. I felt still. 7 courses. 7 truths. My wife. My brother. My investor. All seated at my table. All undone by their own words. As Sarah approached me, she lowered her voice. You did this right. I looked around the room, the walls my grandmother painted. The ceiling beams I restored. The kitchen staff who stood frozen near the doorway. I just finished what they started, I said. Vanessa didn't look back as they led her out. Lucas did. But there was nothing left to say. The explosion they planned never came. The only thing that detonated that night was the truth. The private dining room emptied in under 10 minutes. Uniformed officers secured the perimeter, while 2 forensic techs moved in with gloves and hard cases. They worked methodically, photographing the projector screen, bagging the printed emails, sealing the coffee jar I'd kept refrigerated since the lab confirmation. Vanessa sat straight in her chair while an officer read her rights. You have the right to remain silent. Her expression was composed again. Controlled. Like she was already calculating angles. Lucas wasn't. He kept shaking his head. I didn't know about the coffee, he muttered. I thought she was just pushing him to sell. Sarah stood in front of them. Voice level. Lucas Morales, you're being charged with conspiracy to commit arson, conspiracy to commit aggravated assault, and financial fraud. She turned to Vanessa. Vanessa Morales, you're being charged with felony poisoning, financial conspiracy, and solicitation related to the planned gas explosion. Victor tried to interrupt again. Benjamin stepped forward smoothly. You'll have your counsel. Tonight isn't that conversation. Forensics collected. The loosened exterior gas valve documentation. Surveillance hard drives, printed wire transfers, the toxicology report. Lucas's phone, still unlocked from earlier. Vanessa finally spoke as they stood her up. You think this makes you strong? She asked me quietly. I met her eyes. No, I said. This makes me done. Lucas looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Adrian, he said. Voice cracking. I didn't think she'd actually. I cut him off. You thought I was weak. That was enough. As they were escorted out through the side exit, red and blue lights reflected against Casa Elena's windows not as fire, but as consequence. Sarah approached once the room cleared. "The district attorney will move fast," she said. "Poisoning with documented intent and financial motive strengthens everything. The gas plot elevates it." "And Lucas?" I asked. "He'll likely cooperate," she replied. "People do when the reality settles in." I looked around the dining room again. No smoke, no damage, no collapse. Just plates half-eaten and truth exposed. The legal process would take months, but the night they planned to erase me became the night they erased themselves. December 18, 2024, 3 months after the arrest. The courtroom felt smaller than I expected. Vanessa sat at the defense table in a gray suit. Hair pulled back, posture straight, controlled to the end. Lucas looked different, thinner, avoiding eye contact. Victor stared forward like this was a business inconvenience. The prosecution laid it out clean: financial conspiracy to force liquidation of Casa Elena, felony poisoning through repeated IPACAC administration, documented coordination with a contractor to stage a fatal gas leak. The lab report held, the surveillance held, the recorded call held, the financial trail held. Lucas had taken a plea deal 2 weeks earlier. He testified, confirmed meetings with Victor, confirmed the plan for October 28th. Admitted he believed the incident would remove me from the equation. "I didn't think it would actually kill him," he said on the stand. The prosecutor didn't soften. "You discussed less collateral. What did you believe that meant?" Lucas didn't answer. Vanessa never testified. When sentencing came, the judge didn't hesitate. "Vanessa Morales," he said, voice firm, "your actions demonstrate premeditation, calculated harm, and exploitation of marital trust. 12 years. Restitution tied to financial damages and legal costs. Victor Hale, 8 years for conspiracy and financial fraud. Lucas Morales, reduced sentence 5 years due to cooperation and plea agreement." The gavel struck. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like finality. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered. I didn't stop. I didn't speak. Benjamin walked beside me. "You retain full ownership of Casa Elena," he said. "All transfer attempts nullified." I nodded. That was the part that mattered. Later that week, I received a letter from Lucas. Short, an apology. No excuses this time. Vanessa didn't write. I didn't expect her to. Justice didn't fix what was broken. But it did something important. It ended it. May 2025. Casa Elena reopened its patio for spring service under clear skies. The sign hadn't changed. The recipes hadn't changed, but I had. For months after the trial, I moved through life like someone recalibrating. Not broken, not angry, just aware. I hired 2 new line cooks, promoted Mateo to general manager, installed brighter lighting in the kitchen, repainted the private dining room. I kept the projector, not for exposure, for presentations, because 3 months after sentencing, I launched something new: the Elena Foundation, seeded with part of the trust fund my grandmother left me. Its purpose was simple: provide emergency legal and financial assistance to people facing coercion inside marriages or family-run businesses. Not revenge. Defense. Our first applicant was a woman named Elena Cruz. Different Elena. Early 40s. She'd left a financially controlling husband who had isolated her from accounts and threatened to bankrupt her family's bakery if she filed for divorce. When she sat across from me in the same private dining room where everything detonated, her hands trembled. "I feel crazy," she said. Like maybe I imagined it all. I understood that feeling. I slid a folder toward her. "Document everything," I said. "Silence protects the wrong people." Casa Elena became more than a restaurant after that. We hosted quarterly workshops, small, quiet gatherings, lawyers, financial planners, counselors, no drama, just education. I didn't talk publicly about Vanessa often, or Lucas. But when people ask what I learned, I tell them, this trust is not blindness, love is not surrender, and weakness is often something other people assign to you so they can justify hurting you. The biggest mistake I made wasn't loving my wife. It was ignoring the early signals because I didn't want conflict. If you feel something shifting, don't panic. Observe, document, protect your finances, protect your health, and never assume that being calm means you're powerless. The night they planned to erase me became the night I proved something to myself. Not that I could win, but that I could stand still under pressure and think. That matters more. If this story resonated with you, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe if you believe truth, even when it's uncomfortable, deserves light. This story was created by the Fish Tells Stories team for entertainment purposes. Do not replicate or attempt any actions described. Always seek professional legal and medical guidance in real-life situations. Casa Elena still opens at 11 a.m. I still arrive at 7:30, but now when I drink my coffee I make it myself.